Hello, Wagwan. Welcome to another episode of Design to Win. I'm your host, C. Ruth Taylor, and this is a program where we give you the roadmap to win at life with a little Caribbean flavor. Coming up in today's episode, you're going to hear an interview from our Caribbean Singles Summit. You're going to hear Janice and Okive's story, how they transitioned successfully from dating to marriage, and what we can learn to win in our relationships. The interview is conducted by my friend Rowan King. So stay tuned. Moderator, Mr. King, a financial and planning analysis manager at a major telecommunications company.
Keith and Janice Wilson. They have been married for 3.5 years. They have a 7.5-month-old baby, Malachi. Wow. And Janice is an educator, and Keith is a photographer. And they believe that even after you get married, you have to date anyway. It leads to a healthy marriage. As we start off our journey, we want to start off with Keith and Janice. Just want to tell that explain to us what has their experience been like, moving from being single to married, and just tell us their stories.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting us. So one of the things about marriage when you have children is that sometimes you can't predict what's going to happen. So our son Malachi is usually asleep at this time until morning. And I guess he didn't want to miss the final night. So he's here with us, trying to rip off my wig and my necklace. So we want to share our story, the full story, and then share what we believe are some gems from our story that might be helpful to others. So in 2007, at my very first teaching job, I had a coworker who was from Portland. I was working in Hanover, and I began to talk to her about the parish. I remember seeing pictures of this place, and I thought to myself, there's no way this could be Jamaica. It's just too beautiful. And so for years, I kept saying to her, I'm coming home with you one weekend or one holiday, and it never happened. And in 2015, I made a plan that I was going to go to Portland for my birthday because I had to see this place. It's as if there was something pulling me to the parish. And so I decided to plan a whole birthday weekend. I went, I had a blast. And because I felt so awesome being there for the weekend, I decided to apply for teaching jobs there. I got a job, and a month later, I was moving to the parish. Now, when I went to the parish, I went to my home church's branch. I didn't feel very comfortable, to be honest, because not much, I believe, was happening, and I wanted to be somewhere where I believed things were happening. So it didn't feel like I was sort of wasting time. And so a colleague of mine told me about a church that was about 5 minutes drive from where I lived. And I went there and I began going there. And to date, it's the best church experience ever. I love it there. I won't mention the name of the church. Those who know me, you might know. But for privacy purposes and some of the things we might share, I won't say the name of the church. So Okive and I actually have two different versions of of the beginning of how we met. What I remember, he didn't remember me from that time. So I'm still upset, but I let him start off by sharing that part of the story, and then we'll continue.
She remember us meeting at birthday. Our sister introduced us, but I didn't remember that until we actually started dating. I remember our pastor, after I was in church, wanted a few young people who we thought could be leaders in the church. And we had a couple group meetings. And in our very first meeting, that's how I remember showing up in our very first meeting. I remember looking at her aunt to see if she was married, and just checking her out. Like, from that very first time, I could say, I hope she's not married. She's very beautiful and I'd like to get to know her. That's how I remember getting to meet her.
So we actually, so I noticed him before that. So I was on my way from Kingston, from the passport office. The bus broke down in Buff Bay. I was so upset because it was night and I didn't plan to go into Kingston. I was upset because the passport office in Portland is not a real passport office. They simply check your documents and send you to Kingston. I had no plans to go into Kingston, so I was upset. So when the bus broke down, I was even more upset. When we got off the bus, well, I got off the bus. I saw a church sister, who I didn't know was on the bus. Wonderful lady. She's probably like my mother's age or older. So when she saw me, she kind of came close to me in a bid to protect me because it was night. And then she saw Okive and she introduced us and she said, Brother Okive. So I assumed that he went to the same church, but because I was fairly new there, you know, I couldn't have known everybody, but I saw him and I thought, he looks nice. But I just wanted to get home. I was upset. So
And that's what I remember.
yeah, like he says, I looked miserable, but he didn't notice me in that kind of way at that time. So after we were in the group at church, the pastor also created a WhatsApp group. And because he was there, I thought, you know, why not reach out to him? So here's my pickup line. I sent a text and I said, how old are you? That was my pickup line. How old are you? And from then on, and we began communicating. And in those maybe few days, I would say, in those few days, I made clear what my standards were. So he knew. He invited me out and so you can tell part of the story, but he invited me out one Sunday night, but I began to get very sick with the flu. And I was in church popping pills like crazy because I'm saying I have to go on this date, this first date. And when I realized it wasn't going to happen because I was really sick, I explained it to him and he understood and then tell the rest.
In our texting, I asked her like stuff that she would like, and she mentioned her love for fish. So I decided to ask her out on a date again, and I brought her to a spot that I think is the best fish spot in Portland. Because I think once a person likes something, you should overdo it. Overdo it.
Yes, yes. So what he failed to mention too was that when I told him I was sick and I really couldn't go on the date, he asked if it was okay to come by to really help out. And he came there, he made soup for me, and every evening after work he would bring orange juice and multi-symptom, Panadol multi-symptom, until I was well enough and he asked me again on the date, and I went, and it was the best date of my life. Even in marriage, it's best date ever because I felt like he really catered to my needs. When we realized that we wanted to be together, we decided that the right thing to do was to inform our pastor of our intentions. So we met with him one Sunday after church, and we told him, sad to say, that it was not met with, I don't know, yeah, not much enthusiasm at all. We came to understand that people in the church have what they believe are ideal ways to court and to date. They believe they know who is fit for who. And so sometimes even when you try to do things the right way, it might not go down the right way, in their opinion. So
they wanted us to group date, and we made efforts to make it happen, but not everyone had the time or the money to go out whenever we are ready to go. So
yeah, we can't blame them.
we just could not work with that. And well,
Yeah. So we began dating consistently because we believe if you want to get to know someone, simply texting on WhatsApp or any other kind of app consistently, it doesn't help you to get to know a person. Because anybody can text, really. You have to be seeing the person, you have to see them in different settings, you have to, as a single woman at the time, I had to to see how much Okive was willing to pursue me. I don't believe women should play hard to get, but I believe women should have high standards, and I believe men should pursue women. And so Okive was doing all of that. I remember the time, the specific moment when I said, this is him, this is him. So they were cutting his hours at work, and he sent me a message, like so timid, explaining that they were cutting his hours, and so he wouldn't get as much pay, and it was going to affect how often he took me on dates and where he took me. And then he asked me if there's anything else he can do in the place of dates. And he asked one day if he cooked for me, if I'd appreciate that as a date. And I honestly was blown away by it, because I didn't know of men who made that kind of effort. Something can't happen, just can't happen in their book. But he tried his very best. And so I often say that my decision to get married was purely logical, but also deeply emotional. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm so in love with him. He pursued me in an honorable way, and that made me decide that yes. A part of the story I forgot to share was that I was going to leave Portland. I stayed in Portland for 2 years. I was going to stay there for 2.5 months. Because the job I had was hellish, to say the least. It was like a nightmare nobody could have prepared me for. And so I wrote my thing to resign. And 3 mornings in a row, the Holy Spirit woke me up and said, stay. I bawled and I bawled and I bawled, because I was not going to stay somewhere where I was unhappy. It was hellish. And I was not, I wasn't going to disobey God, though. I sometimes joke and say I can't swim like Jonah, so I won't disobey. But nothing will get me to disobey God. Nothing, not even sacrificing my own peace of mind. So I stayed. And if I had disobeyed, I would not have met this wonderful man that I call my gift, because he's truly a gift. He's annoying, like most husbands are, but he's my gift. I got calls for jobs in Bimini, in the Bahamas. I got calls for jobs at schools I'd taught before. And I said, I'm not going to leave, because God said I'm to stay in Portland. And it took me 2 years, almost 2 years after that time to actually meet Okive. But God said stay, and I stayed. All right. So, yes. What do you want to share?
Wonderful, wonderful story. Anything else?
Yes. Yes. So we want, so there's some things that we want to share from the story itself. One of the things I came to understand was that you have to have an active social life as a single person, Christian or not. You have to have an active social life. And hey, you want to share something? Yeah.
I believe once a person have an active social life, like I am the man and she is the woman, I am pursuing her. Once I can see evidence that she is like out there exploring certain things, like whether it's active in the church or just enjoying life, I think that once a person make attempts to come into your life, they have to add value to the life that you're already living.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree. So the standards I'd set in terms of, I was living it up. I was living it up before I met Okive. And so he felt like he had to add to that. You know, in terms of, I mean, he wasn't very, very active in terms of social life, but I saw him as someone very decent. And so I believed I had to be a certain way to win his heart as well, because it's a two-way street. You know, one thing I can say as a woman to single women is that if you don't know what you want, you will get what you don't want, as it relates to relationships. For example, if Okive asked me then, what do you like? And if I said, I don't know, then it's on him to either be an honorable man and do something wonderful, or just to do something really sloppy, because, you know, I don't know what I want. So it's important to know what you want.
And that is one of the things that draw me to her. She know exactly what she wants. and I know that I had to raise my standards because I wasn't much of a outgoing person. But because I could see that she enjoys going out, I had to make efforts to make sure that we go out on dates and do stuff that not only she, but I would also enjoy.
Yes, yes. And when you have an active social life, you get to know yourself more. So, for example, as a single woman, if I went to 10 movies for the month, I could learn that I don't really like horror movies. Comedy is my thing. So if I'm telling a man what I like, I can say, oh, I don't mind watching a horror movie, but I really like comedies. You know, so you get to know yourself. And the kind of, like I always say, boredom and loneliness are foreign feelings for me. I really don't get bored or lonely. Somebody can make me bored, but by myself, no, because I had a very active social life. Someone told me I was too happy to be single. I'm not sure if that was such a bad thing, but you have to have a life, and not just as a single person, but as a person, you have to have a life. You know, you have to have a life. If you also don't set standards for yourself, somebody will set it for you, and it might not be as high as Malachi is having a ball here. If you don't set certain standards, for example, Okive knew that any man I decided to marry had to be a man who pursued me, and dating was the beginning of that. But if I didn't have that standard, all he would do is ask me to come and visit me. And when you visit somebody consistently, no dating, more than likely, sex will come into play. By the time you get there, you realize that nothing much was happening otherwise. And so it probably lasts 3 or 4 months the most, like in the peak of a relationship. And then it starts to fade. And that's what happens most times, not just for Christians, but people in general. People don't do things the logical way that will give them what they really want. And then we complain at the end to say, you know, it just didn't work out how it was supposed to. So set standards, develop an active social life. Anything else, dear? Yes. So we were talking in terms of planning for tonight, and one of the things we said that was it will take the effort of like 10,000 freedom fighters to pursue God's purpose or God's will for your life and your own personal interests. Because when you are married, your focus becomes what's in your house, which is your husband or wife and children if you do have children. It takes so much effort to focus on anything else, even your own personal interests. So it's very important that before you're married, you're working on building your life before marriage. So anything to add about that? Is it hard to really focus on yourself in marriage?
Sometimes, but we both like to take a little quiet time to reflect on like our day or reflect on things that just worry us. So in that time we can find time to pray, but it comes better when you both have a good understanding of who your partner is, and the best way to get to know that is to like be consistent, because even while in marriage there's changes. There are things that she goes to like while we are together, and also the same for me.
Yes, yes.
So it works when you know each other.
Yes, yes. I agree. We grow, we change, we evolve as we get married. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago, you know? So it's important that you're still doing things to get to know each other. One of the things I realized in marriage was that, so we went on the Logos Hope book ship. I think somebody mentioned it earlier. We went on the book ship, and the side I saw to Okive, like I was like, is it a good idea to get married to this man? He was very upset, like on his face. But I got to learn afterwards that he hates crowds. it makes him very uncomfortable. I didn't know at the time. So I was like, what's his problem? But he explained. So if we had not gone to places where there were crowds, he wouldn't be able to explain this to me. So for example, we went to Times Square in New York and I said, babe, are you okay in this kind of crowd? Like I had, so I knew afterwards. But if we were at home all the time and then there was some big important event and then he gets an attitude, I'd probably get upset and, it spoiled the whole night. So it's important to keep dating. You will get so caught up in daily life, cooking, washing, cleaning, taking care of children, having sex, that you forget to do the things that are so important. Like the best sex for us is after a date. Like it's like I get a new boyfriend after each date. Yes, because Malachi, that's an issue in marriage. Children. So it's very important to keep doing those things. So before marriage, develop an active social life. Know what you want. When you meet someone, ensure the person dates you. If you're a woman, if you're a man, pursue a woman in an honorable way. Don't force her to have sex. Get to know her. And if you don't mean her well, let her be. One of the things yes, you were saying something?
The most important institution created by God is the marriage, because everything, like whether it's a job or community, is influenced by our family.
Yeah.
And I think that if a man isn't serious about getting to know a female or prospective wife, like you run the risk of just using that person or probably getting that person pregnant, and that's our next child without a father. And too much of the younger generation, like myself, are being influenced by the wrong thing. So if we can ensure that our marriage is solid and ensure that we commit to the person we are with, like that eliminates the things that happens out on the road, and there will be more sons with fathers grooming them for life.
Yes.
And grooming them for marriage.
Yes, I agree. I think marriage is like when God joins two people together for his purpose, is like recruiting soldiers for an army. There's no individual soldier who will understand fully the war that is being waged, or the battle that the country is really fighting. The one soldier won't understand, but each one that is recruited will help in the bigger scheme of things, the grand scheme of things. And so you have to understand that marriage is for purpose, for God's purpose. If we had very good marriages, there'll be no single parent homes. There'll be no single parent homes. As a teacher, I can tell you, I was in a classroom for 11 years, and I could almost guess the kids with no fathers at home in terms of behavioral issues. Sometimes we joke and say, I can tell you you're from a two-parent family, because there's a difference. Society would be so much better if we try to do things the right way, and not just to kind of idle, So I recently realized, so I thought that God asking me to stay in Portland was for my benefit, to meet a wonderful man. That's what I thought. But recently I was basically just combing my brain about, all that's happening. I can tell you, marriage is a real struggle. It is a beautiful union, but we have struggled every single year. I'm in therapy now because of the trauma of pregnancy. What I went through, I wouldn't wish it on the devil. Believe you me, that's how horrible pregnancy was for me. My son is alive, he's healthy, but there are real struggles in marriage. Nothing is as it seems when we don't have it or own it. Nothing at all, not even marriage. Being with somebody for years is not the same as being married at all. Like I said, it's beautiful. I mean, like God has, when I say God has given me a gift in Okive, a real gift, but marriage is a real struggle. It brings up the very worst in you for the better, for things you didn't know you were struggling with. Okive said to me, I think it was last year, that he wished he knew himself before getting married, but if not for marriage, he wouldn't be on his way to getting to know himself. So sometimes we give advice as people in the kingdom. We say, a man should have this, a woman should have this. It's good to have certain things, but understand that God's ways are above our ways. His thoughts are above our thoughts. And so the purpose for joining people together might not be what the world thinks. I believe from then, and I still believe now, that it was God's purpose for joining Okive and I. And it doesn't matter what happens from today onwards, nothing can change that fact. And if you don't believe that the person you're marrying is because of God's purpose, do not do it. Don't do it. Don't get married because you got pregnant quick. Don't get married because you really want the license to have sex, because it won't always be great. Don't get married because the sex was good, because as you get older, certain things change. In pregnancy, we barely had sex. I couldn't manage. If I turn left, I vomit. Like all kinds of stuff happened to me. So understand why you are getting into what you're getting into. It's about God's purpose. But even though it's about God, God is going to make it beautiful as well, even with the struggles. We have a beautiful marriage, but
I think it's because of the boundary that we set for ourselves from the very beginning. Like, we have complete access to each other's phone. There's no secret. We are just open with each other about everything. We don't allow the outside world to come into our marriage in any way. So that's what I think.
We believe that once you open a certain door, that's it. In Jamaica, we said, dog me, I'm just suck one pussy to biscuit. Yes. Like all hell will break loose. So, like we have no secrets. And we were this way from the dating stage because we knew we wanted to be together. We wanted something solid, So I think those are our few words in Jesus' name. Amen.
We trust that you found that story helpful. Remember, no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, you're going to make it. With faith, courage, and consistent action, you're going to make it. It's not over until you win. Ta for now, until next time.